Hello, I'm Nikola Minkov, CEO at Serpact. I have more than 6 years in SEO. My focus in SEO is on technical SEO, Google AMP, local SEO, and structured data.
Hello, my name is Dido. I'm the head of SEO at Serpact with almost 15 years in SEO, and main focus technical SEO, content optimization, and semantic SEO. Today's topic of our first webinar is from JavaScript SEO to the new Google Search Console.
As you know, this is Serpact's first webinar, and we are very excited to start with John Mueller. John is Webmaster Trends Analyst at Google. He is the person who all SEO specialists go to when they have a problem with website or is general update. John is the soul and vibe of the SEO community, and we can't handle any complicated situation without him. Whatever we say will not be enough. So, hello, John. How are you?
Hi. It's great to be here. Thank you for setting this up. Looking forward to seeing what we hear from Bulgaria.
Hi, John.
Hi, John.
First topic will be about Google Search Console. What is the current state of Google Search Console? What are the new features you are working on? Can you share some info publicly?
Some new features that we're working on. So we try not to pre-announce. That means we try to focus on the things that we know are actually happening and that are just coming out. So one of the big things that has been happening is a switch to the new Search Console, where you've probably seen some of the reports. That's something that has been a long time in work. Some of the other things that are happening, which some of you might have seen over time as well, is we're sending out specific messages for different kinds of problems now more. So for example, if we see that a website is moving to HTTPS but is doing that in a broken way, then we will try to send a message to let them know about this problem. That's kind of, I guess, the current state of things there. We're also testing various other things that we will probably roll out in the next couple of months, where we try to make things a little bit easier for webmasters and SEOs to get the information that they need to get it at the right level.
OK. So we have a specific question for you now, which is something we have observed during the last weeks. We see that Google Search Console sometimes says that a particular page is not indexed, but when we search for it on Google Search, actually, it's findable. Can you explain us why this is happening at the moment?
Why this is happening? So I think it's something that is sometimes hard to know in general, because it can be quite specific for an individual URL. Sometimes what happens is there's just a time delay between the data that we have in Search Console and the current state in the search results. So that's something that can always happen. Another thing that I've seen sometimes happening is that we have different data centers, and sometimes we have different data available in these different data centers, where Search Console will look in general, and maybe the data in one specific data center is slightly different. So if you search, then maybe it shows it's indexed. If someone else searches, maybe it shows it's not indexed. So that can also happen. And the third thing that I've sometimes seen is that sometimes we just pick a different URL for that content, but we know that they're related to the other URL. So if you explicitly search for the wrong URL, we'll still show it to you, because we can figure out, oh, you want to see the data of the actually indexed URL.
OK, so in other words, we shouldn't be concerned if you see such a message for error on Google Search Console, and just to expect the new data to be updated in our profiles, and after that you see that everything is OK. Does the URL inspection tool will help in this situation? So maybe we can use it to check if it's indexed or not. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's a great way to test that. I would also try to look at the bigger picture and not just look at individual URLs and see, oh, this URL is not indexed, I must fix this problem. But rather to look at your website and say, oh, most of my products are indexed, and individual ones are not indexed, and that's fine. Like we don't guarantee indexing of every URL that we see.
Yeah, or maybe we can get a specific portion of the URLs, and we can test them and have a look on the results on Google, and that's why we will be, let's say, that way, calm down, that everything is okay. We don't need to fix something.
Exactly. Oftentimes people worry about one specific URL, and they see a problem or they see a difference in the search results, but that is one URL that maybe nobody searches for anyway. So it's better to spend your energy on things that are actually a big part of your website and very visible for your website.
And just another related question to this one. Sometimes we see that it takes a little bit more time for a URL to be indexed. This is also something absolutely normal, right?
That's completely normal, correct.
Completely normal. So it's not needed to be concerned on that.
No, that's completely normal. Sometimes, depending on the website and where it is linked, we'll try to get it within minutes, maybe hours or days. Sometimes it takes longer. Maybe it takes even weeks for something to be indexed. And that's completely normal. That's kind of the normal process that we have with indexing. It can also happen that something in our systems get slowed down a little bit, so that when you look at pages, maybe they used to be indexed every day, and then it takes a couple of days to be indexed. And that's something that can always happen. Like sometimes things on our side go slow, sometimes things on your side go slow. It's life with computers.
We're asking this because we have seen many times that people are starting aggressively using the fetches Google's future, and they're trying and praying the URL to be there. But we just wanted to clarify that this is absolutely normal.
That's correct.
And John, the page speed is very important for indexing.
Page speed is an important topic for us. So we do use speed in ranking on mobile and on desktop. It's a fairly small factor, but it can play a very big role for users. When they go to a website and it's a shop, and the shop is really slow, then they're not going to browse in the shop and find more products and try to buy them. They'll move on to somewhere else. Where if it's a very fast site, then they take time to click around, try things out, and maybe buy something more. So I think the ranking factor is one part, but it's only a small part. And the bigger part is really how users like your website in the end, if they stay and if they convert, which is what you really want. Like you want them to buy something from you, not just to show up in the search results.
Yes, absolutely. Another interesting question we have, and maybe a subtopic for you. We have observed that a form for interviewing webmasters was shared on Twitter about a month ago. Can you share some info about that with us? It was about the Search Console messaging research. What kind of interview are you going to do? If you can share some info publicly, of course.
We try to do user research regularly. So that's something that comes in various forms. Sometimes we have an interview form where people can sign up and ask to take part. Sometimes we contact people directly through Search Console, where we'll send them a message and say, hey, we would like to have you in our panel of beta testers. And that's something that we try to do in a representative way. So not just take the big SEO companies and get their feedback, but kind of everyone who's using Search Console. And these type of panels and interviews that we do, they happen all the time. And it's something that I find very useful, because I always go to the Search Console team and I say, this is what you will hear when you ask webmasters. And they come back and say, oh, we don't believe you. We want to know for sure. And sometimes I'm right. Sometimes I'm wrong. It's something that I find a lot more useful if we have actual data from actual users rather than them just saying, well, this one person says webmasters will like this or will not like this. It helps them to understand the bigger picture too.
John, meanwhile, we have a question from our audience at the moment, and the question is, does AdBlockers block ga.js, the file of Google Analytics, or the GTM tag? If yes, is there a way to fix it?
I have no idea. I don't know what these ad blockers do. I suspect there are probably some that do block these tags, but I don't know. From a search point of view, that doesn't really matter for us. It's something a user has come to your website, and you're using these features to provide some functionality, either for tracking user counts or for providing, I don't know, personalization or whatever. And that's not something that, from a search side, we would be involved in. That's purely between you and your users.
OK, we sometimes see that the GTM tags or the ga.js impacts the loading speed in the page speed in sites too. Does it have any impact on the website quality at all, and how Google sees the website quality and the loading speed, or Google just ignores it and continue?
We use all of these things when we look at speed. So that's something that I think is very important from Google's side, is that we don't say this is a script from Google, therefore it doesn't count. Because the user, when they open your web page, they just see it's slow. And they don't see, oh, it's slow because a Google ad is loading. And they don't care it's from Google or not. It's just the page is slow.
Yeah.
So all of our speed testing tools try to look at the actual picture, regardless of where those scripts come from.
So in other words, we have to keep in mind these resources and find a way how to optimize them too, if we use them, of course.
Sure.
So we can improve the user experience of our users. OK, great. And maybe one of our last questions about the Google Search Console, if we don't have any more from the audience. When do you think we can expect a more complete version of the new Search Console? And do you plan to sunset the old version? Or it will be here for us in the future for, let's say, maybe 6 months to 1 year or something like
that? We're adding new features as we go along. So as we see that we can take old features and recreate them in a way that will work well with the new platform, we will do that. I don't think there will be a single time where we just say, oh, everything from the old Search Console is now in the new Search Console. That's happening step by step. There will also be some features that we don't add to the new Search Console, where we think maybe these are not as useful as they used to be. Maybe they were more confusing than they were actually useful in the end. I think that will happen too. And with regards to sunsetting, I expect that some of the features that are now available in the new Search Console, they will be turned off in the old Search Console at some point. So Search Analytics, for example, the new one is much better. It has all of the old data. It's a fancy new UI. I would expect in, I don't know, months, orders of magnitude, that the team says it's better to turn off the old feature that does the same thing, so that we don't have to maintain it, so that we don't have to keep those servers running, that we don't have to care about the code that is used there, that we can really focus on making more new features available.
So in other words, it is set as a long-term goal at Google to continue the improvements on the Google Search Console. Let's make a small recap. And the old one will be still here with us. Do you recommend us to make a comparison or completely go with the new one?
I would always be critical of the data that you see. So I think that's kind of the nature of SEO life, is never trust one single source, but always try to confirm what you see. And if you notice that there are problems with the data in one or the other, then please let us know. But yeah, I would certainly expect some of the old features to go away over time. And it might also happen that some features that you really like in the old Search Console don't make it to the new Search Console. because we're trying to reprioritize that. So I don't want to kind of say that things will go away and no replacement will be there, but in reality, we have to reprioritize sometimes, and some of these things will go away, and some of them will be even fancier in the new Search Console.
Okay.
We have one more question from our audience, John. Do we have to be concerned about competitors who are mislead SERP with fake generated searches with their brand combined with the keywords they hunt?
So basically, competitors that are just searching for their own brand.
In other words, John, the real point of the question is that there are some people, we all know that there are some people who create softwares, or they pay to another people to search for their brand and click on their brand on the STRP results. Does this impact, or does Google knows about that? And do you have something to, do you have a plan for these people so the SERP pages are not misleading?
I think that's an age-old thing. It's something that people have been doing since the beginning in the hope that they can get some magical advantage out of that. And I don't see that being any useful. It's something, for example, with the ads in search, we have a lot of practice dealing with ad fraud, with bad ad clicks. And I think that's something that, for the most part, has absolutely no impact. It's wasted time. So if your competitor is searching for their own site and doing something in the search results, like, well, at least they're not doing anything useful to promote their site. So.
And especially as from what I remember from one of your latest Google Hangouts, Webmaster Google Hangouts, I remember that you said that if we write a good content with valuable information, there is no way any search competitor to outrank us, especially if we promote the brand, if you work extensively on the content, and if you listen to our users in other ways. In other words.
Yeah, I mean, like, I would always be careful with absolutisms, like saying there is no way anyone can rank above us. But I think those are really good strategic ways, yeah.
Okay.
So we have a lot of questions, John. We can start talk about schema.org, and are you planning to create and implement new schema.org types?
So schema.org is an independent organization. I think it's completely separately run. So I don't have any influence on which types they're going to introduce. But I know they have a fairly kind of well thought out process to add new types. Usually, what I would recommend looking at is thinking about which ways you would like your content to be visible in search. And that's something where we will sometimes take into account these individual schema.org entities and reuse them.
We recently have seen that you announced about the HowTo Q&A and FAQ types of schema.org markups. And you have been working with partners to experiment with ways to surface previews for FAQ and how to content on the search results. What is the current state of this, and when we can expect them to be presented on the results of Google more extensively? Let's say that way.
I don't know. I've seen the blog posts, and I've seen some of these results in the search results. I think it looks really nice, but I don't know what the next plans are there. Usually, what happens with a lot of these search features is we will test them first with either a handful of sites or maybe a specific language or location, usually English in the US, because that's kind of easiest for the teams. And from there, if things look good, then we will start to expand that a little bit. And depending on the feature and how it works, that could be that we say we make it global, or it could be that we make it step by step to be added more and more places. So for example, the jobs markup is something that I think is growing step by step. And other types of rich results are things that we just turn on globally.
OK.
So we have a lot of questions, John.
Cool.
What do you think, again, from our audience, from the chat, what do you think about schema markup type for spammy structured markup, penalties affecting traffic, and how come we keep on getting declines even after the website was completely cleaned from the ground up?
What a question.
I don't know. That sounds like something where you would need to look at the website specifically.
Yeah,
to
it's very
see
specific.
exactly what is happening.
Yeah.
One thing that sometimes plays a role with these is that depending on what type of manual action you received, if you just remove everything from your website, then that's not necessarily what the web spam team is looking for. So for example, if your website is flagged as being I don't know, spammy content, and you remove all of the content from your website, then the web spam team, when they see a reconsideration request, they see, oh, there's no content here. Therefore, there's nothing to rank. So there's no advantage for this website to not have a manual action here. Instead, what they want to see is that you fix the issue, that you have this type of structured data again, that you have it implemented in the correct way, so that they can be sure that when they switch that off, that actually the structured data that we show is in compliance with our guidelines.
OK. We have a very specific question here about DMCA and the right to be forgotten. We have seen that sometimes, this is an information from the forum, but we have seen sometimes that website marked with DMCA this could be a signal for low quality for the whole website, but if it is of course penalized by DMCA. But how much time does it take for DMCA the right to be forgotten request to be processed by Google? We have seen some question about this on the forums, and asked by people. They're asking about when, for example, these old results will be deleted from Google. I still see them. For example, I remember an example with a student who wasn't a student at a specific university, but the information was there and he wanted to be deleted and so on. Usually, how much time is needed?
I have no idea. I believe we have a combination of automated and manual processes, and some of the ones where we do manually review the requests to make sure that they're correct. I could imagine that it's not so trivial to review them. So that I don't know what time frame like we would have there.
So in other words, we can use also the feedback forms of Google and send some direct messages to the team. And
I don't think that would go faster, because it's something that in both of those cases it would need to be reviewed by the legal team and not by the general search team.
I see.
And if they have a delay in reviewing these manually, then you can't like push it through anyway. Then it still needs to be reviewed. So I don't know. Legal topics are always a bit tricky, because I can't speak from a legal point of view with regards to these themes. So I don't know what the legal requirements are, or what legal options you would have available there. That's something where you'd really need to talk with a lawyer of your own to kind of have that covered properly.
Recently, we had a talk with Nicola, and we come up with an idea. Maybe you already implemented it to Google, maybe not. What do you think about schema markup type for restaurants menu? For example, something like that includes the price, name of the dish, direct order of the meal in the form of the graphic panel or element. What do you think about this?
I thought we had something for menus already, but I don't know what exactly that is, or if that's something more within the Google My Business markup, where maybe you can submit a PDF file. I don't know.
Yeah, in Google My Business, you can submit your menu.
Yeah.
But directly on SERP will be amazing if we have this option to check the price.
Yeah, I think the tricky part with a lot of these special markup types is we have to balance how much work we expect the webmaster to do. And if we say that all restaurants need to use this special schema.org markup for item they have on their website, then that's a lot of work. And if that's a lot of work, and if it's hard for them to do, if these are non-technical people, then maybe not a lot of people will actually implement it, and then maybe we wouldn't be able to show it in search at all, because if we have 5 menus out of 1,000 restaurants, it's not very useful to show those in search.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Dido, we can go to the JavaScript and SEO. Very popular topic in SEO community.
And one of the most discussed at the moment on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
So what are the common problems with crawling and indexing which should be taken into consideration when you use, for example, React or single-page application and all JavaScript-based frameworks? What should be careful with so we can be sure that the crawling and indexing will be right for Google? We won't see, or at least we won't have so many problems to fix in the end of the day.
I think it's always something where you need to have some base amount of knowledge about how JavaScript works to really be able to help these sites properly. And in addition, you also need to have the normal SEO knowledge. So that's something where sometimes the issues are with regards to how Googlebot is able to process the JavaScript. And a lot of times the issues are very basic SEO issues, like they're not using URLs on a website. So they have a single-page app. It's all the same URL, but you can click around and see different content. And this is something where an SEO would look at it and say, oh, it's so obvious. You need separate URLs. Or they don't have links between the individual URLs that they have, but they link with a JavaScript functionality. So maybe like a button or an image that calls JavaScript and says, oh, load the other page. And an SEO would look at that and say, there are no links. Therefore, Googlebot will not be able to crawl this website. So that's something where knowing how JavaScript works and being able to understand how the rendering side works is one thing, but also being able to bring in the kind of foundational SEO knowledge that you have collected over the years is also very important. So I don't think there's like one single thing that causes the most problems. It's really a combination of various things. But one thing I do want to say there is JavaScript is not going away. So more and more developers are using JavaScript frameworks. And it's something that, as an SEO, you need to be open to the reality that JavaScript is being used everywhere. So you can't go to all of these developers and companies and say, oh, you should get rid of all of your JavaScript and make a static HTML page, because that's not the reality. That's very rare that you'll be able to tell them, like, you need to remake your whole business on the website again. Now you have to do something completely different just for SEO. So you have to be able to speak in their language and be able to communicate in a reasonable way with them, to explain the issues in a way that is logical and understandable for them as well. So instead of going to them and saying, like, you should turn off JavaScript because Googlebot will break, it's important to figure out what is the problem with their current setup and explain it in a way that they understand from a technical point of view, and not that it comes across as, oh, I am following the church of Google SEO, and you must follow these guidelines blindly without knowing what they're about. So being able to communicate with developers that are working on these JavaScript sites, I think is very critical and very much something that any SEO who wants to be on top of their game for the long run, they really need to build up these skills.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, so John, before a few weeks ago, I think so, in Twitter, you say we doesn't crawl and render escape fragment anymore, but you can crawl and render hash fragment very well. Can you confirm?
I think there are two things kind of mixed up there. So the old Ajax crawling scheme is something that came out, I don't know, maybe 7, 8 years ago, where if you use the hash bang signal in a URL, so the number sign and exclamation mark in a URL, then what would happen there is that a search engine would crawl the escaped fragment URL, which is a query string. So if your page uses the hash fragment, then we know not to try to get that page, but rather the different page. And nowadays, what is happening is we don't try to get the different page anymore, but rather we take the hash bang URL and we try to render that one directly. So it's not that the hash bang is not being crawled anymore, but rather that we don't crawl the alternate URL.
OK, thank you. We have one question from our audience again. How long does Google cache JS and CSS resources?
There is no specific time.
No.
So we try to cache a little bit more aggressively so that we don't cause problems on your website when we crawl the website. So that's something that we've been talking about a little bit. For the most part, it's really rare that I see any problem with that. It would only be a problem if you change your JavaScript files significantly so that the old JavaScript file will not work with the new one. But that's something that very rarely happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
OK, and 2 questions, one from our audience and one from me. Let's start with the audience. Can you rely that Google will continue to improve work with JavaScript-based websites? We know that something is currently being done, and you're working really hard on improving the crawling and indexing of these websites, understanding it better, and so on. But this is maybe you're still in development process. So what are the next steps of Google when it comes to improving the crawling and indexing of JavaScript websites?
I think we'll continue to improve that. So that will definitely happen. But what will not happen is that we will magically be able to index every JavaScript-based website.
Every JavaScript, yes.
So there will always be some functionality that is such that only makes sense in a browser, and we would not be able to use that for indexing. So I believe something like 3D graphics, you can do them in the browser, but for rendering, it doesn't make sense for us to support that. Or saving local files. You can do that in a browser. It makes sense. But Googlebot will not be able to save local files from random websites on the internet and return them to the website afterwards. That's something that I think just doesn't make sense for a search engine to do.
That absolutely makes sense, yes. And my question now, which is related to the JS and CSS, the CSS resources, sometimes we don't know that by accident some resources are deleted from let's say from a specific server. Let's say external server where we get icons, for example, or any specific style, layout, and so on. How Google treats these broken resources? Does they impact the quality of the website, or is it just everything related to the user experience?
They don't play a role for us. It's very common that JavaScript leads to 404 pages or CSS or something. That's I don't know. That's life on the internet. Things always change. What is important is that the page, when it is rendered, has the content that you want to have indexed. So if the JavaScript file that is a 404 now is the file that was loading the content from the server, then obviously we don't have that content. But if it's an icon, if it's like a favicon, if it's a CSS file that you only need for certain device types, it can happen. And we can still index the rest of the content, so that's fine.
OK, great.
One more question, Dido, from our audience. How
Yeah,
much time does it take between Googlebot crawling and rendering a page?
There's no fixed time.
There's no fixed time, yes.
Yeah, I don't know. This sometimes comes up, but it's similar to normal crawling and indexing. There's no fixed time. So sometimes it's very fast. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. But it's also something, at least at the moment, to keep in mind that there is a bit of a time delay between crawling and rendering. So if you have a website that changes content very quickly, and the content is loaded with JavaScript, then maybe we will not be able to index it as quickly. So if it's a news website and you rely on JavaScript rendering, then that's probably not so good. If it's a blog that doesn't change so frequently, then maybe that's perfectly fine to have a JavaScript-based website that relies on rendering for indexing.
Yeah, and related question to this one. Sometimes people come and say that they're trying to fetch their URL on the Google Search Console, but it takes a lot of time. Is it concerning, or we can just try again? And it's not always a signal that we have a problem with the website.
Yeah, I would definitely try again. And if it always takes a lot of time, or if it always times out, then that's something you can look into. In Search Console, with the crawl rate statistics, you can see a little bit if we can crawl at a reasonable speed. And if that's OK, then I usually wouldn't worry about it.
Another question from our audience. How does Google treat website resources, CSS and JavaScript and images, if they're residing on a CDN on a separate domain versus a CDN on a subdomain?
Pretty much exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
So, yeah. I think images are the only ones where I would watch out for this. Because if you change the image URL, then we have to re-index those images for Google Images. So that's something where I wouldn't move the images around randomly. And if you do move them, make sure that you have 301 redirect set up for them. For the other types of content, that's usually less of a problem because we don't index like the CSS files. It's, like we see them when we render, and if they're on a CDN, like whatever, that's perfectly fine.
And a related question to this: if we have a broken CSS, for example, or JavaScript, does it work if you redirect it with 301, or we can just keep it as it is with 404?
You can do either. So I would tend to redirect them just so that it's really clear what you're changing. But you can do either. Some people also use a kind of a timestamp on the URL. So the JavaScript file, and then a question mark, and then maybe timestamp equals the last change date of the JavaScript file, so that when the page loads, it always uses the current version of that JavaScript file. That's another thing that you can do.
Well, John, a lot of questions are coming to us.
John, we have absolutely out-of-topic question. Yeah, it's OK, about AMP. Do you think AMP will be the new standard in the next future? So we need to write website AMP first. It will be also useful for e-commerce or news content projects.
So I think the need part is definitely no. So it's not that you need to make an AMP-based website. But the AMP framework is very, very fast, and it's a great way to make websites. So I definitely see that more and more websites use the AMP framework as a general way of making their website. And I think that's a good development. It's not that good in the sense that like everyone needs to use Google technologies, but it's a very easy way to make a fast and secure website. So I think that's something I I would personally like to see more of. Regarding the different types of websites, that's something you kind of have to think about for yourself. I think AMP has more and more functionality. So more and more things are possible with AMP pages. But you still need to think about how easy is it for me to actually implement this with AMP, or is it something that I need to wait? Or maybe I can use an iframe to use an AMP for the general page and an iframe for that specific element or thing that I want to do that's a bit more fancy. Those are all different options. But I would definitely not stop talking about AMP. And really, if you're new to the web and you're trying to make new websites, then this is a really nice way to kind of use a framework that's fast, that's reliable, that's fairly safe in the sense that it's hard to break things if it remains a valid AMP.
Yeah, actually, AMP have a lot of things now. Maybe we don't have any restriction with AMP. Our landing page is with AMP now, and our live stream is go on AMP now.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a question from the forum we have seen many times. Sometimes people, and even here in Bulgaria, where they try to implement the AMP because it's new, it works very good, and it's functional. And we sometimes see that people are afraid of the errors, the error messages on Google Search Console about the AMP. Do they impact the search visibility at all of the AMP, or they are more related to the user experience? I mean, should we be concerned on them, or we have to set them as long-term goals and fix them in the future?
I don't know which specific errors you mean, but in general, what happens with AMP pages is we can crawl and index these pages for web search normally. And if they're invalid HTML or if they're not completely valid AMP, that's perfectly fine. We can still index most of the content. But if they are invalid AMP pages, then we won't show them with the AMP viewer. Because we don't know, will it work with the AMP viewer or not. So if you want to be seen with the AMP viewer, then definitely make sure that you fix those issues. And also, when you see the errors in Search Console, double check to make sure that they're actually still errors. Maybe like you're using a plugin with WordPress or some other CMS, and maybe the plugin is fixed in the meantime, and the errors are still based on the index content and not on the live content.
Okay, and a question again from our audience. What do you think about the combination of PWA and AMP?
I think that's a really cool combination, but it's also one that can be quite tricky to implement properly. So it's something where with AMP, if you have a WordPress site, then sometimes it's easy just to take a plugin and turn it on. Whereas if you have a random PWA, you can't just turn on AMP pages. You really have to kind of go into the code and work on that to make that happen. So it's not something that I would recommend any non-technical webmaster to just say, oh, I will make a PWA plus AMP page. It's something you really need to have a developer or a developer team to help you to make that work properly.
Okay. Some questions here from our Bulgarian audience. They were in advance asked to us during the promotional campaign of the webinar. We don't have a future snippet still in Bulgaria, and not only in Bulgaria, in some countries too. But we see some snippets like rating coming from product markup that are working well and so on. So when do we expect it here? We are very excited to see it because we have seen many times that it works very well for the websites. It's great for reputation. It's great for the users, and people are coming very, I don't know how to say, they're very happy to see the perfect answer and that the answer is coming from a specific website. So can we expect it here in Bulgaria soon?
I have no idea. I can't pre-announce things, but I also, for a lot of these things, for example, I didn't know that they're not available in Bulgaria. I thought they would be globally in the meantime. But I don't know why certain areas or languages or countries might be kind of limited in that regard. But yeah, I'll definitely ask with the team though.
Okay, that will be great because we heard a lot of people are waiting for it, and they're producing content. They're trying to be there, but they still don't see it here in Bulgaria. And, yes,
I think with featured snippets, it's also something that is a bit tricky in the sense that you can't really create content specifically for it because it's essentially a type of snippet that we show. So it's not a specific markup that you need to put on your page, and then it will happen. But if you're thinking that people are searching for different topics and you have a great way to provide a short and unique answer for that, I think that's always a win, even if it's not shown as a featured snippet.
Yeah, but many people from SEO community want them, you know.
Yeah, I know. People want everything.
Yeah.
You're so right.
Yeah. We have a very interesting question from Boris Rabchev from our team, our SEO strategist. Does Google understand the positive and negative text? Does positive text about a brand will affect brand trust and reputation, and negative text as well?
I don't know. I don't know how we would take that into account for ranking. I think it's very tricky because understanding when someone is mentioning a brand is hard. Understanding the real context of that mention is very hard. Understanding things like sarcasm or kind of the more slang usage of individual words, which might mean something completely different. That's very hard. So I don't know how we would be easily able to take that into account.
Yes. Okay. And what about the disavowing backlinks? We have seen that many times. People are talking about that the function is not working, unless it's a via automated chain redirect or anchor text spam attack or something like that. Is it worth disavowing links and all? For example, on a daily basis or a weekly or monthly basis? What are your recommendations when it comes to the disavowing function of the Google Search Console?
Disavow. So for the most part, we do try to recognize bad links automatically, and we ignore them. So I would say 90%, I don't know, just to make up a number, most of the usage will be from websites that actually have a manual action with regards to the bad backlinks that they have. So this is something where the web spam team looked at the website and say, oh, I see what you've been doing here. And then
we know your dirty secrets.
I mean, a lot of these are very, very obvious, but yeah. And then you remove the links that you can, and you use the disavow file for the things you can't remove. And then that's very useful for the web spam team to see, oh, they understood what the problem was. They took the steps to clean it up. And then they can say, OK, we can resolve this manual action. With regards to proactively using the disavow tool, I think for most websites, they don't need to do that. It's more something where when someone comes to me and says, oh, I'm very worried about this negative SEO, and I see someone is linking to my website in a very weird way, and I really want to make sure that Google doesn't think that this is me, then using the disavow tool is fine. I think it's a good way to get a little bit more comfortable and to really know for sure that Google will not take this into account. Probably we are already ignoring those links. But by using the disavow tool, you can be really sure that this is taken out of our systems and no longer used. But what does happen with the disavow tool is it doesn't remove the links in Search Console. So that's often one thing where people say, oh, it doesn't work because it's still linked in Search Console. And we show no-follow links in Search Console. We show links that are in the disavow tool in Search Console. They don't get removed there.
Yeah.
Okay.
But how often we can check them? I remember you recommend not every day, every week, or 2 times per week, just like after few months or 1 time per month. It's not necessary every day to check your link profile and do your disavow.
Yeah, I would think for most websites you don't need to proactively check it out.
Yeah.
So if you look into the feature every now and then, you think, oh, whatever, random websites are linking to me, that's fine.
Mhm.
If you look in there and you see, oh, this is really weird, then maybe you can take a step to disavow. But I would not do this in a sense that you have to look every week or every month or something like that.
So okay. So John, some questions. Actually, we have a lot of questions from our audience, so I will try to select the most interesting ones. One of them I will paraphrase now for you is: do you plan to enter any specific operators related to JavaScript sites, or you continue using the Google Search Console for the JavaScript websites, just like for the regular websites? I mean, this one written in HTML, CSS, in JavaScript. Should we expect something like any specific comments on Google to notify the bot that the page is completed, not waiting for external AJAX request to be completed or something like that? Do you plan something like this, or it doesn't make sense to you?
I think we try to avoid doing this so that we don't end up making it so that people have to do different things depending on the technology that they use. So as much as possible, we want to make sure that the same tools in Search Console work for any type of website, regardless of the technology that you use.
OK. And the next question is, does it hurt if your website is included in somebody's Disavow file?
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Does it hurt if your website, for example, if you have a website and our website is included in the Disavow file of another website in Google Search Console?
No.
Like your competitors make this of many webmasters.
No.
No.
It's something we take that into account when we see that link from the other website pointing to your website. But if there's no link from your website to your competitor's website, like there's nothing to disavow. And even if there is a link, then that's something it's a purely technical thing. It's not a sign of quality. Because you could imagine a situation where you have some paid links on a page and some normal links on a page. And just because there are some paid links on a page doesn't mean that the page is a bad page.
Depends. And 2 more questions there related to some frightened people here. Does a website with mobile usability issues detected email because we received the messages about the errors over email? Does it mean that the website is penalized automatically, or the rankings will be lowered, or something like that? It's a completely a lot of people are concerned about that when they receive error message over email and they start calling and they start waiting for consultations or asking you over the Webmaster Hangouts. So what do you think about this?
So the one place where that would play a role is if we can recognize that a page is not mobile friendly, then it won't have the mobile friendly boost in the mobile search results. So that could have a small impact on rankings on mobile specifically. But it's on a per-page basis. It's not that the whole website is suddenly demoted in search. And it's really only in the mobile search results.
OK.
So it's good to fix, but it's not that your website will disappear from search.
OK, great.
We have one related question. It's not so related, but from our audience, this is maybe the last questions because we have just 5 minutes. A question about ref1 in Dutch region, DATCH. If a website is serving the same content on all German-speaking users under the domain .d, does it make a sense to use ref1 with same URLs?
If there's only one version of this content, then the hreflang doesn't change anything. So if you only have German content and you say this is for these different languages, and there's no alternative content to show, then the hreflang doesn't change anything.
Okay. And now
do you have any final question? Because we have one funny part.
Yes.
Okay.
One funny part.
Yeah, John, we have one funny part in our stream. And finally, the fun part of our webinar for you. We have a question about the most appropriated alt tag for the following image.
Oh my gosh. OK, let me click and see. Oh, it's very cool. Best alt tag for this image. I don't know. So I would use an alternative tag for it and just call it Barry Schwartz. I think he just won the prize for Search Personality of the Year at a conference. So yeah, that's a nice photo of him.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. So, John, can you give one general advice for Bulgarian community for SEO? Not like some with very details, some general.
Briefly, some brief tips on all the topics we have discussed today.
Wow. OK. So the one meta tag to rank #1 in Bulgaria. I guess my main tip would be to make sure that from a technical point of view, you have a reasonable website and that you write in the language of your users. So that you really think about what users would be searching for and that you provide the content that helps answer these questions as directly as possible so that we can recommend your pages and say, here is where you will find the answer to those questions that you have.
OK.
Yeah. More natural.
More natural, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds obvious, but it's something that I still see quite often, where people will come to us and say, why don't I rank for this query? And then we look it up and we look in the details and we say, like, nobody is searching for this query. Why do you even care about it? You should be focusing on what users are actually searching for and make sure that your website provides something for that.
So we have to be after the value of the content and let's say this natural language form when we write the content and when we structure it and when we serve it to the users. And of course, the promotion of this content is also very important, something we have seen many times. This is because somebody has to see this content, not just reading us on our own and telling us, wow, we are great.
Yeah.
But it will be written in this natural form and phrases and so on. That's why I very often recommend to people on the search forum, webmaster forum, actually, that they should write for their users and pay attention to their website technically, not just promoting, getting backlinks, and or using or the keyword density and stuffing the content with keywords again and again and again. And after that, they're coming back and started asking the question, why I don't rank for these keywords?
Yeah. But I think it also goes into the direction of you want to be found for these keywords, but you also want to convert your users. If they go to your pages and all of your content is hard to understand, then they're not going to convert. They're not going to buy something.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So thank you for coming with us, John. And we are very happy. And it was great that you are our first guest in our webinar series. And thank you for all the useful answers to our questions. There were many, but we hope you don't feel overwhelmed at the moment. And we hope that we will continue to communicate with you over the Webmaster Hangouts. Maybe we will have you again in the next webinars after a period of time. And again, thanks for coming. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, John.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for being such dedicated visitors in the Office Hours Hangouts. It's really rare that I don't see one of you there, even in the middle of the night in your time. So
yeah. Thank you to John. We appreciate everything from you, and for us is so much. And I hope our audience is very happy. This is our first webinar, and next one will be next month, and the name is Eric Eng. So thank you, John. Thank you, all of you, and good luck, and be more natural with your content.
Absolutely.
Thank you.